"I see you," Mila quoted. The figure a few seats in front of her stood up and sat opposite her. "It's sucking you in," he said. "You'll get caught in the hole." "Gam?" Mila asked. "Don't worry, I wouldn't." "That's why you got a return ticket? You a stalker?" Mila corrected herself. "You are." Why did I answer myself? Why do you want to know everything about Gam? It's attractive. Mila caught herself. Yes, it's attractive. But what do you mean by getting caught? You will understand. The person wrote a number on a napkin and passed it to her. "This is a cab service. They tell you stories to pass your time. But be careful where you end up." I never heard of Gam having a cab service. Mila took the napkin and looked at the random numbers and letters. Is this even a real number? Why don't you figure it out? So that was a few hours ago, and Mila found herself in the middle of nowhere and pulled out the napkin. I'll be surprised if a cab even shows up. The girl dialed the number and someone picked it up. Were to Miss Mila? How did they get my name? Zone 3, Bus Terminal 3. I'll be there. With that, the line went dead. Seems like a long wait. She closed her eyes. She almost jumped out of her skin when a horn blared, and she looked at the glaring headlight. How did I miss that? "You miss Mila?" A gruff voice that seemed to smoke 2 packets a day asked. Yes. Mila only had just said that when the man had come in front of the line. The woman stared at the being that carried her suitcase to the cargo. The man was fat and buff. The skin below his neck just above the collar was a weird green, and were his veins moving? "It'll cost you extra for stalling." "Yes, sorry." Mila quietly took her seat. The engine started and the drive began. Not being able to hold on long, Mila spoke. "What even is Gam? Is it paranormal? Is it some gross product of science gone wrong, or some cult?" The man laughed, "All of them, darling." He wheezed a bit, then resumed laughing. "Forget about me." Mila said, concern in her voice. "You need to get to the hospital." The man leaned and pulled out a paper from the cabinet. Mila took it and read it. The car was suddenly silent. "Is this how long you'll live?" she asked. "Yeah." The man took back the paper. "If I'm taken care of properly, the thing under Gam will not mess with my body." "Taken care of?" "Yeah." Julia hiked up prices around the festival. "Why?" "Dear." The man sighed. "You know nothing." The car drove past the silent trees on each side. No one knew when it came, how it came, or where it's headed. The driver took a turn. By the time the Japanese discovered it was already a god worshipped by the ancestors of the villagers. "Have you seen it?" "Everyone has seen it." The driver chuckled. "You just didn't notice it." He said, "The most prominent is the fat and round cats loitering where the mother is more active." I am no historian. The driver continued, "But I knew that centuries, while the northeast Himalayan ranges were forming, mother already exists. There was a drought, but Gam was green and supplied water. That was around the season I believed. People flocked and struck the earth to find pulsating green flesh. People being suspicious, worshipped it. They were allowed to drink the water in exchange for a sacrifice. It must be organic. You catch on fast, miss." The driver said, "Mother is strongest when there is rainfall. After the harvest festival, she becomes weak and the villagers try to escape. For some reason, no one ever left." "Why?" "The same reason you'll never leave." For some reason, Mila felt shivers down her spine. She looked down and saw a fat cat. The cat meowed and blinked its green hazy eyes. "You can stop." Mila said nervously, "I wanted to get down here." The driver only laughed. "Mother has seen you," he said, but stopped the car by the side. "There's only a week to the harvest festival. Mother is the strongest that day, but if you lived out, Mother has no power the following months." Mila could still hear the wheezy laugh of the driver as she clutched her belongings and ran in the opposite direction. The thickness of the night almost suffocated her. "The driver is long gone now," she told herself. "There's no way he will come back for me." The thought of seeing the green driver made her shiver and panic at the same time. Mila looked up at the sky, and for a brief moment, the twinkling stars looked green. The road was pitch black, but at least she could see the sky. The woman clutched her bag and pulled out her phone. The light of the screen blinded her a bit. "No wonder I'm going BL." For a moment she stopped. Right in front of her was an emaciated foot. That was when she heard the dry throat groaning. Sudden fright overtook the woman. What? All around her dark figures walked. They brushed past her, but no one noticed her or said anything. The sound of raspy groaning was all around her. Oh God! Mila was shaking. She froze as a figure by her stopped and inched closer. As the light of her phone landed on the face, Mila did everything in her willpower to not make a sound. The lengthened face with 3 dark holes stared at her. The 2 eyes for holes blinked independently of each other. Mila shut her eyes, dropped her phone, and ran to the opposite side. For a long time, she panicked, but the blessing came in the form of a bright headlight. She broke down as she waved for the vehicle to stop. The truck arrived near her and the driver, another male, stuck out his head. He first noticed the shaking girl and then got out of the truck. Without a word, he helped the girl and her luggage in the truck. For a long time, no one spoke. Mila was sure she dozed off, but she came to it when she heard the door open. She looked around in a haze and noticed they were in front of a thatched roof house. The driver turned to her and spoke. "They will help you." Mila was confused, but thanked the driver as he pulled off. "Julia told me about you." Mila had a hard time gendering the person. "You can stay here until Mother's wrath calms down." "Thank you, call me Chate." The person smiled and entered the hut. To Mila's surprise, the inside was much larger and more modern. "You have a beautiful house," Mila commented. "Thank you," Chate said. "I built it myself." He handed her a glass of lukewarm green tea. "Took me 2 lifetimes and 4 marriages." Mila took a sip of her tea. "You built it brick by brick?" Chate laughed a bit. "It's been a long time since I've gotten a visitor." Mila managed to breathe out, but the look of the thing jolted her back to present. "Where were you doing in the middle of the road?" "I hired some sketchy driver off some service." Mila babbled, said he was working to pay for a funeral. "Yes," Chate nodded. "Julia does rake in cash around this time." "How do you know Julia?" The guest asked, sipping in her tea. "How do you know Julia?" "Some friend recommended me to see her if I wanted to know about Gam." "And it never crossed you how a young woman who reads palm and deals with the dead in this small place manages to live as she likes?" Mila stopped. "That never crossed my mind." She wondered. Gam is not that small. It has 3 decent-sized zones. "That's what you all get wrong." Chate laughed. "The more you get sucked into Gam, the bigger it appears." "What?" "A full day and a half's journey is enough to get you out of the region," the non-binary individual said, "but still now you are nowhere near the edge of Gam." The person got up and walked to the window. "Come look." Mila got up and approached the window. A few distances away, it was hard to pinpoint, but once she saw it, Mila saw a huge dilapidated building. "That is a labyrinth," Chate said. "Sometimes it's a hospital, a hotel, a housing complex, even an abandoned World War II prison, and other times it's just a plain old building." They continued, "I have seen all types of people walk in but never walk out. Those who did walk out are infected by Mother. There was this one time a sickness broke out. Mother spared a man, but he now walks around mindless." They turned to her. "I believe you to have heard this story." Mila nodded, "But there was a huge river." "What about all the people who ever lived?" "They're still there," Chate replied. "They just don't know. It's like a time loop." Mila gasped. She then turned to them. "What about you?" The person smiled. "You can go back from that way." They pointed at the old road that seemed to lead out of the grassy land. "But I don't know if you can escape, though. A bus will be there at the bus stop," Chate said. "The drivers don't take money. It will take you to the nearest village. You must reach there before sunset." Mila thanked them and took her bags. The road was near the abandoned building. Sometimes she would hear children laughing and balls being bounced off the wall. On her way, Mila also saw fat round cats rolling around. She quickened her pace and rushed through the tall grasses and out to an awaiting bus. She said nothing as she took her seat. Almost immediately the bus started and Mila fell asleep. Mila jolted awake when she hit her head against the glass window. The sun had already set and she walked out to the station. Reach before sunset. Nervously, Mila took her bags and walked into the village. The village was dark and silent. The traveling woman walked around looking for a place to stay or at the least a restaurant where she could eat. Dear God, she'd kill for a piece of roti right now. At a distance, Mila could see the dark blue of the sky that ended just above her sight. She looked up and saw that she was under a huge shade. Scratch that. Mila looked around. Almost the entire village was covered by something. I just had to drop my phone. As Mila searched for a source of light in her bag, a clatter of something caught her attention. The woman picked it up and immediately fear overtook her. Shaking, she picked up her cracked phone and looked up. Something was moving. Shaking in fright, Mila turned on her flashlight and pointed at the ceiling. The ceiling was made of a tangled mesh of limbs and torso, their head facing down to look over the street. Just the light hit the grotesque faces. They looked at her and opened their mouth impossibly large. Hello, Mila. Mila had seen better days. She looked emaciated, and she looked like she hadn't slept this past week. Mila spoke. I was to die 2 days ago. Oh, Julia replied. Anything I can help you with? I want my palm read. The woman placed her left palm on the table. I want to know how I will die. On seeing the look on Julia's face, Mila replied, I want to go as painlessly as possible. I'm sorry, Miss Mila. Julia said, palm reading doesn't do that. I just want to die a painless death. Mila raised her voice. I'm sick of living here. I'm taking the next flight home. As she walked out, she flipped Julia the finger. The palm reader just sighed. Julia was about to go back to her shop when there was a loud crash followed by a scream. Julia rushed out of the building and saw a bloodied car accident. The car had swerved off and struck a pedestrian. Mila's body was contorted at every unnatural angle next to the car on the side of the road. Her eyes were on Julia until they slowly, painfully closed. But Julia didn't see that, among the red blood splattered on the road, there were outlines of multiple unnatural bodies.